Member for Forestfield.
Mr Speaker, my name is Andrew Waddell and I stand here before you today as the new member for Forestfield. Firstly, let me congratulate you on your election as Speaker. I would also like to extend a congratulations to all other new members in the House. The things that bind us together are far greater than those that separate us. It's an inspiring privilege to serve the people of my electorate in this place. Forestfield is a new seat, made up of High Wycombe and Maida Vale to the north, Forestfield and Waddell Grove in the centre, and parts of Kenwick and Maddington to the south. It's a wide and diverse seat with suburbs that are distinct in nature. On behalf of my constituents, I look forward to many a great debate within this chamber. I will strive to live up to the trust placed in me by the people of my electorate, and I will work hard to make a solid contribution to the state of WA. I grew up in High Wycombe, in Stevens Road actually. It was a road that was boundaried by unimproved bushland at the time. I went to primary school at High Wycombe Primary School. I went to high school at Forestfield High School. All of my earliest memories are from living, walking about and playing in those streets. I remember the friendly street parties that my parents would attend. I remember how everyone knew everyone else in the street, how we all pitched in when there was a job to be done somewhere. Now, these are idealistic childhood memories, but there was a real sense of community at the time, and I know our neighbours were not strangers. The Perth of the early 1970s was a different place, particularly in Forestfield, than that of today. We felt isolated not just from the world, but also from the city. The days before satellite TV, mobile phones, the nightly TV news was sometimes a day behind world events. Public transport was scarce, and as a child, even doing the weekly shopping trip to Midland was a bit of an adventure. That sense of wanting to overcome the isolation has been a constant source of drive for me ever since. As a teenager, I remember being part of the bulletin board scene. In particular, I was a member of the FidoNet system. It was a system run by computer enthusiasts in the mid-1980s. It was a simple system that allowed one computer to link with another, passing messages over local telephone calls from node to node spanning the globe. It meant that over the course of a single day, an email could circle the globe. The world suddenly felt an awful lot smaller. In the early 1990s, I was introduced to a new system called the Internet. This was not the Internet members here know today. It was the Internet that existed before Tim Berners-Lee gifted the web to us, before streaming video, podcasts, before spam. It was a text-based system. But the first time I gophered into the MIT library and browsed their collection, I truly felt the future had arrived and the world was at my fingertips. Once again, the world felt a lot smaller. Since then, we've seen technology shrink distances even more. So now it's easier to watch Barack Obama's historic victory speech live from Chicago than it is to find out what's happening in the local shopping centre down in Forestfield. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's why today it's sometimes easier to feel a citizen of the world than to be a member of your own local community. I'll come back to this issue later. I completed a commerce degree from Curtin University in the early 1990s, was tossed into the real world to start my professional life. You can fit my professional life into two different modes. There's IR and there's IT, Industrial Relations and Information Technology. I was fortunate to be taken into a graduate program at Doppler, the Department of Productivity and Labour Relations. There, I was exposed to a wide range of experiences. One of the most memorable was my time in the phone room staffing something called WageLine. There I had to answer queries from people as to what their award conditions were and what their rights were and when they were underpaid or what to do when they were unfairly dismissed. From there I was recruited as an industrial officer into the Transport Workers Union by my good friend Mark Cuomo. There I had the opportunity to represent many workers in front of the industrial tribunals. I can tell members here that there is no training like industrial relations to get to know the intimate daily lives of working people, their hopes, their dreams and their fears. It is a knowledge of ordinary working Australians that I'm proud to share with many of my Labor colleagues in this place, and I shall draw upon it daily in my life as an MP. In 1996, I took a leap and began my own IT company. IT has always been a passion and a joy for me. It gave me a chance to indulge myself in my hobbies, building and repairing computer systems, programming, and generally making technology work for people. Running your own successful business teaches you an entirely different set of lessons. It's about innovation, it's about enterprise, it's about self-sufficiency, and it's about self-reliance. It's about making something, taking pride in it, and seeing how it contributes to the community, and being a business that people want to use and are happy to refer others to. Running my own business gave me a sense of self-sufficiency and self-reliance. With that came a feeling of freedom, of knowing that I could fall back on my own skills into the future and knowing that I could provide for the needs of my family. So how do these two things, a background with a trade union and a background with small business, come together into a philosophy? Around the seat of Forestfield, as many of you would probably experience in your own electorates, there's a problem with graffiti tagging. Some places are more prone than others, like the Waddell Family Centre, which seems to get attacked nearly every week, and the Telephone Exchange in Midland, and the one in Forestfield, which has been covered in ever-changing graffiti for the last decade or so. As I door-knocked and heard the stories about graffiti tagging, where it was, how long it can take for a wall to be clean, I realised that most people don't know how to get rid of the problem. They don't like it, but there's a sense in many people of helplessness at not being able to do anything about this scourge. And that's where my two backgrounds fuse together. We, as citizens, need to take personal responsibility for the collective health and well-being of our own community. Many people look to government as a sort of parent. They expect this parent to step in and fix their problems. They complain to their parent when something is not fair. Yet they see their parent as somehow beyond control or influence. I hope, in my time in this House, to change that. Take the graffiti tagging issue. I will set up a website to help people track and log graffiti occurrences in Forestfield. Members of the Forestfield community can take digital photographs of any graffiti they see, post it on the website. The site will then also provide advice as to what steps should be taken to solve the problem. Members of the community will be able to take ownership or custody of the problem and leave it as an open ticket for somebody else to take charge of. The website will track the location of attacks through an application like Google Earth, so we can begin to find patterns. And we can also enable tracking to inform people living in the local area of the progress of the cleanup. This is an example of what I'm going to call open source activism. The term open source comes from software development, where a community of users develop software in an open process and agree to freely share their work for the greater good. A lot of people would be familiar with software from companies like Microsoft or Apple. Now, the software they write, they own. It's a closed system. If there's a problem, if there's a bug, it's up to them to fix it. With open source, nobody owns the software, but a community of users contribute to its development for free. Computer software developed through open source is usually free, adapts more quickly to changes, and generally operates more securely and robustly. I would like to apply this concept to communities. I would like to use technology to bring our communities together in a virtual way, where we can chat about local issues and things that matter to us. What we need is to create an environment where everyone can plug in and participate in a conversation, even if it's 3 in the morning. Leave their comments for somebody else to read, maybe at 10 in the morning, and have a public conversation over a period of days. So by virtualising the dialogue, we can ensure that a dialogue actually happens. We need to create a place where neighbours can note that there is an issue, discuss it, and actually take responsibility. I will fix that one. Or at least, ask if anyone is taking care of the mess down the street. They should not simply assume that somebody else is looking after it. Not wait for the government to step in, not hope for mum and dad to fix it. We can all work collaboratively to solve simple problems like cleaning up a wall and taking responsibility for our own community. Now, maybe there are some people out there who want a Microsoft or an Apple out-of-the-box solution from government, but I think it's better in the long run if we as a community start writing our own community software. We must take responsibility for our own lives, and as the old saying goes, feed a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach him to fish and he eats for a lifetime. Assuming he properly manages the fish stocks, that is. Now, the funny thing about talking to your neighbours is this. It's a great way to quickly achieve a consensus as to what is right and what should be done. This is the basis of community standards, and community standards lead to community behaviours, and I defy anyone in this place to tell me this is not what the public is currently crying out for. I've heard many members here over the last few days from all sides speak of this very issue. How do we develop community standards if we don't talk to our neighbours? How do we express standards if we don't know what they are? When did we, as a community, agree to abdicate our right to express standards? For surely that was the day we agreed to live behind locked and barred doors, isolated from our neighbours, and frightened at the sound of a simple door knock. It was when we stopped expressing our standards that we stopped feeling safe in our homes. We became isolated. This isolation is a blight and a threat to the continued functioning and well-being of our society. It is remarkable how few people know their neighbours today. It is remarkable how few people feel they could lean on a neighbour in a time of crisis. It is remarkable that in a time of unprecedented communication, we don't communicate. The consequence of all this is that government and central services are expected to pick up the slack. Where once neighbours would all pitch in, people now expect a central agency to do the work, and this comes at a cost, a financial cost, but more importantly, a social cost. So, how do we as a parliament get people to talk to their neighbours? It's not something we can legislate. I do, however, believe that we need to take action to turn this situation about. I would like to suggest that in the vein of some of the great community education programs like Life Be In It or Slip Slop Slap, we create a Know Thy Neighbour campaign. A simple program to encourage everyone to get to know the people around them. A program to build trust among people who are much the same and basically have the same needs and wants. I would like to see streets where parents feel safe letting their children play in the knowledge that their nearest neighbour would step in at the first sign of trouble. So my message is that we need to trust ourselves, and we need to trust the local community to show what's best for itself. For us in this house, it means we need to listen and we need to enable. Some great things are already happening. I recently discovered the sustainability program at the Dawson Park Primary School in my electorate. Their students have been charged with preserving and restoring native bushland. They use water tanks, are installing their own solar cells, and the school is teaching the students that that a sustainable lifestyle does not mean a reduction in the quality of lifestyle. This program is driven by some very enthusiastic teachers and committed members of the local community. They use government grants and services where available, but the program is completely driven from the local level. Another case I experienced was last Sunday. I was at the Forestfield Soccer Club, who were hosting a Malaysian junior team on exchange. This was an event where the local club invited an under-15s team from Kuala Lumpur to play a series of tournaments against the Forestfield Club as well as some of the other local Perth teams. The idea was to foster a long-term relationship between the clubs and to help link up local businesses with opportunities from the Malaysian businesses and vice versa. The event was a huge success and a great deal of goodwill was generated on both communities, and they're both better for it today. Again, this was driven by committed local people looking after their own community. As I visit local community groups and hold forums in and around my electorate, my offers for help are often not about doing but enabling. I will help with the connecting. I will help them seek resources. I will help bring the community together, and I will help write the letters and use my influence in any way. What I want to do is to help build community groups that are willing to look after themselves and their communities. Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce into this House a Hopi word, Koyana Squatsi. Translated, this means life out of balance, or a way of life that calls for another way of life. Our society is out of balance. We live lifestyles that clearly call for a different way of living. Global warming alone attests for that. We, as parliamentarians, have to start thinking differently. We have to start thinking about change. We have to start thinking about communities in a different way. We need to partner with our communities. We need to trust them to set their own standards. We need to abandon the old top-down government as parent model that tells everyone what's best for them. We need to stop staring into the mirror of Erised. Mr Speaker, take for instance the federal government's intention to establish the so-called Clean Feed for Internet Traffic initiative. The government intends to introduce a mandatory filtering of all illegal material and a second optional filter to block content deemed inappropriate for children. Now, on the surface, the idea of a clean feed would appear to be a good idea, but we have to ask ourselves, what are we really trying to achieve? What we want is a safe internet for our children. But are we trying to substitute community standards and parental supervision with government regulation? Are we freely giving up our freedom of speech for a symbolic effort that will ultimately achieve nothing but damage the internet itself? Coming from Western Australia, as I said earlier, I've always been keenly aware of our isolation. However, in recent years that isolation has begun to break down through our ability to interact with many other people across the world and participate in global events through the internet. And what we need for this, to facilitate this, is a high-speed, high-availability internet. We need it for our education, we need it for our entertainment, we need it for our commerce. It is not an optional item. The federal government is planning to filter the internet, and this means our content access on the internet will be decided by a committee or bureaucrats out of Canberra. They will determine what is fit for our eyes, and in doing so will introduce technical barriers to the proper functioning of the internet. Internet providers and the government's own lab tests have found that presently available... Mr Speaker, could I have an extension?
Extension granted.
Internet providers and the government's own lab tests have found that presently available filters are not capable of adequately distinguishing between legal and illegal content and can degrade internet speeds by up to 86%. Their filtering plan will ultimately slow down our access and cause considerable grief for many internet applications. For many businesses that rely on the internet, for many schools that rely on the internet, this will be a disaster. Is it worth it? Will this achieve the federal government's objectives? Will it make the internet safe? Quite simply, the answer is no. The internet filter is designed to work on web protocols. You might remember how earlier I spoke about the internet before the web. There is a lot more to the internet than the web, the WW bit we see every day. This plan completely fails to understand the fact that the majority of internet traffic today, particularly the nasties, are transmitted through other protocols such as peer-to-peer. Think of a protocol as a way of communication, just like you can send a message by a lot of means: letter, fax, email, telephone call, TV commercial or cellmat distribution. There are lots of ways or protocols for sending information across the internet. Okay, at this point I think I need to confess that I'm a bit of a geek. I love the technical details. I bring to this place a unique set of skills, and I hope to use it for the good of WA. Sometimes a little knowledge can actually be a useful thing. Even if the government was able to successfully filter every current protocol available today, new protocols would simply arise that bypass these filters nearly instantly. Mr Speaker, during the Olympics there was a great outcry about censorship of the internet in China. They call it the Great Firewall of China. Yet there are many ways to circumvent the Chinese censorship. The internet was designed for resilience. It was designed to route around damage. It sees censorship as damage. Why does Australia need to damage its connection to the world? So the net effect, if you will excuse the pun, will be to damage a precious resource to us. This is what can happen when technology is not properly understood. This is what can happen when a government insists on a top-down approach. Australian families don't need censorship to keep their children safe. They need knowledge and support. The government certainly has an educative role. There is a world of information that parents could use in setting the standards for their own households. But the clean feed will make the internet slower and less efficient. hand our freedom of speech to a government committee and ultimately do nothing to prevent the transmission of dangerous material. Worse still, it gives our community the illusion that they don't need to worry about a serious issue. As members here would appreciate, it's a long road into this place and there are many people that help along the path. It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge at this time those who played a pivotal role. Firstly, and most importantly, thanks go to my family. My wife Jenny, who I married here in the grounds of Parliament only 9 years ago. She's always known for my passion for public life and has stood by me all the way. She's even sometimes prodded me into the right direction when I've stalled. I love you and thank you for your support. Amelia, my daughter, who's allowed me to experience the world through innocent eyes once more, who's been understanding of the demands placed on her daddy, and who on election eve told me that if I was not successful, the most important thing was that I keep trying. I would also like to acknowledge my parents, Grada and John. My father is no longer with us, but I'm sure he'd be proud that I am here today. Maybe a little disappointed by the side I'm sitting on. My parents gave me my start in life and gave me the very principles and values which have led me to this place and to the success I've enjoyed in my life. My brothers, Alistair and Stuart, for keeping it real and reminding me what a family bond really means. I also owe a debt of gratitude to Jim McGivern and the TWU, Joe Bullock and the SDA, and Dave Kelly and the MISOs. These unions took a chance on me and offered me their support in the last election. I say thank you, and let me say that I'm proud to be associated with the trade union movement. It's a movement that's made a positive contribution to our society, to the lifestyle, to the prosperity and to the safety in the workplace we all enjoy today. I would also like to thank my good friend Jeff Baker for his friendship, advice and his late night help with planning, strategy and motivation. And lastly, I would like to thank my campaign team who made it possible for me to get here. Natalie Machin, Senator Glenn Still, John Davies, Peter Brisbane, Andrew Vittelins, George Thakula and Brendan McShannock, and the innumerable people who supported me in also many ways. I wish I had the time to thank them all. Well, I've got 8 minutes. No. To conclude, I'd like to once again give my thanks to the people of the electorate of Forestfield for their support, for taking a chance on me, and I look forward to representing them in this place over the coming years, and I hope I repay their trust. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to move an amendment, but regrets to inform His Excellency that the Barnett government has failed the people of Western Australia by abandoning plans to extend the rail line to Butler, by failing to order new rail cars and by removing from WA's infrastructure Australia application to all reference to public transport.